Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to go ahead and break down and give you my official prediction for the Dallas Mavericks against the Los Angeles Clippers playoff series. This is this year's 4-5 matchup in the West, and one that felt destined for a while. At one point, the Clippers made it up to the 1 seed, but slowly started to fall down the standings, while the Mavericks were rapidly rising up, and eventually, they were on a collision course for that middle of the standings playoff series, and that's what we've got. It was the first series to be set into stone. These two squads have been locked into playing each other for like a week now. It's going to be great. This is my most anticipated series outside of the Thunder series because that's my favorite team. And I'm sure it's the same case for a lot of you because there's a lot of star power, there's a lot of interesting things going into it, and it is a series with a lot of history involved as well. Over the past 4 or 5 years, these two teams have faced off in the playoffs twice. Once in 2020, where it was Luka Doncic's sophomore season. He had an unbelievable series for a second-year player, hit a game winner, but ultimately it wasn't enough to overcome the Paul George, Kawhi Leonard-led Clippers, who were in their first season over there in LA. Then the next season, they ended up going up 3-2 the Mavericks, that is, on the Clippers, but they just ran into the buzzsaw that was Kawhi Leonard, who had one of the single most efficient and dominant playoff series ever. Luka Doncic did stuff that was already worthy of superstar status, but Kawhi just willed the Clippers over the top to give them the 7-game win. Now's the chance for the Mavericks to go ahead and get a little bit of revenge. This is the best supporting cast that Luka Doncic has ever had. The Clippers feel kind of vulnerable. They are either going to get over the hump here and conquer their demons, or the Clippers are going to once again snuff out the Mavericks' hopes in the first round, and either way, there is a lot on the line for both teams. In one scenario, the Mavericks fall short in a year where Luka Doncic is playing some of the best basketball on the planet. They squander a bunch of momentum, they made all these big trades, they went all in, the definition of it, and still weren't able to win in the first round. Now, maybe next year they could win against a different opponent, but if you're Luka Doncic, part of you has to be wondering, do we need to make some moves, and is this a spot where I can win? Because it'll be the second year not making a second round appearance after leaving the conference finals in 2022. As for the Clippers, consequences are probably even more dire because Paul George and James Harden are both free agents going into the offseason, and there are a lot of rumblings that PG could end up walking if they disappoint, or even if they do well, a team could try and lure him away with a big-time contract. This could be the last chance that the Clippers have to get Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and now James Harden a ring. They went further all in with the addition of James Harden. This is maybe their last and best shot. If they lose in the first round, where do you possibly go from here? So a lot in the line, a lot of talent, a lot of history, and it's a series that I feel like is a toss-up. You could go either way, and I wouldn't be surprised. So let's go ahead and break down the series, talk about some of the keys, and ultimately, like I said earlier, try and make a prediction for what feels like a dead-even split. Let's start off by taking a look at where these teams stand statistically. There's a 1-game difference in record. Clippers have the advantage there. The Mavericks ranked 8th in offense, 18th in defense, and 15th in net rating, while the Clippers rank 4th in offense, 16th in defense, and 7th in net rating. Both teams are a lot better offensively, and the Clippers have the advantage in all these categories across the full year, but things have changed a lot for the Mavericks over the second half of the season. Since the All-Star break, the Mavs have been way better on both ends than the Clippers have had a much better net rating and have went 18-3 over their last 21 games. They've been basically unstoppable, while the Clippers have taken a massive fall from where they were at one point where they did get up to the 1 seed. They were the hottest team in the NBA. Haven't often looked like that juggernaut since the All-Star break. It's been a massive decline. And this is part of why, despite these two teams playing 3 times this season, I feel like there's not much to take away because all 3 games where they played were at December 20th or earlier. And after that moment is when the Clippers went through their roller coaster season. The Mavericks, of course, made the big acquisitions of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford and really caught a rhythm, got healthy. So the Clippers won 2 of those 3 games. I guess you could take that into account if you want to, but I'm not really going to consider it for either side because those games were 4 months ago and things have changed drastically since then. So instead, let's just go ahead and take a look at some of my key points to decide who wins this series. The first one is, how do you slow down Luka Doncic if you're the Clippers? Luka just completed one of the greatest offensive seasons in NBA history, led the league in scoring very, very comfortably, did it efficiently, the best year he's ever had shooting the 3 ball, some of the best playmaking I've ever seen from Luka Doncic. He had a 73-point game this season, a walking triple-double. Luka is more complete than he's ever been. The playmaking is otherworldly, one of the best passers I've ever seen. So even if you put a lot of defensive attention on him, you throw double teams at him, you hedge screens, whatever you try and do, Luka is more often than not going to either beat that double team or make a great pass out of it. He's great at throwing skip passes, finding guys wide open in the corner. If you send some extra pressure before he even gets towards the basket, Luka's going to find somebody who's is open, they're going to swing it over. The Mavericks just have this great ball movement, this great free-flowing offense that all centers off Luka Doncic, who is one of the most perfect offensive on-ball players I've ever seen. So how do you slow Luka Doncic down? I think the best opportunity you have is just throwing Kawhi Leonard at him and seeing what he can do. And Kawhi Leonard has been really good defensively this season. It's been one of the better seasons he's had in a while, but you're also going to be asking a lot out of Kawhi Leonard offensively on that end. If you want to win this series, you're going to need Kawhi Leonard to be the ridiculous Kawhi that you've seen in the playoffs in the past. And is he going to be able to do that when he's also trying to hound Luka Doncic for, 40 or so minutes per game, a guy that is maybe the perfect offensive player at the guard position in the modern NBA? Speaking of Kawhi Leonard, that's another big point because we don't know what's going on with him. Although it's been a fantastic season from him, one of the best ones he's had in a minute, we don't know when or if he's going to be ready and what he's going to look like if he does play. He has not played in the month of April due to some knee inflammation. We don't know exactly what the nature of that is. And Tyronn Lue has been very cryptic about if he's playing or not. Reporters keep asking him, is he going to be ready? And he just keeps saying, we hope so. It's, our goal to have him ready. That's what we're hoping for. He has not said specifically that Kawhi Leonard will be playing game 1 of this series. And this is that time of year for the Clippers where something goes wrong due to injuries. It has happened every single time, whether it was in 2021 where they went to the conference finals, but Kawhi Leonard tore his ACL in the process. It was last year where they were looking great at the end of the season after getting Russell Westbrook, and then Paul George hurt himself in a game against the Thunder. And in the series against the Phoenix Suns, Kawhi Leonard hurt himself after I think it was just 1 or maybe 2 games, and they fell apart in that series. Every single year, some type of major injury pops up that prevents the Clippers from reaching their true potential. And it seems like something's happening with Kawhi, because even if he comes back, knee inflammation for a guy who has a history of knee injuries is concerning, especially if you are asking him to guard Luka Doncic a ton and asking him to be this amazing offensive talent for you too. Kawhi has shown that he can do that, but as he's getting up there in age and now battling an injury, is it going to be effective and possible over a 7-game series potentially where you have to play him like 40 minutes to just keep up this load? It's going to be a lot for Kawhi Leonard. Maybe he can do it, but it is concerning when combined with this injury issue. And if Kawhi Leonard doesn't play in this series, the Clippers have no chance. Even if he misses a couple of games, it may be too much to overcome with how good Dallas is. Even beyond Kawhi Leonard, Harden and Paul George have a history recently of grabbing, nagging injuries around this type of year that hinders them a little bit. They can't afford that. They need the injury bug to stay away, and if it doesn't, it may be over for the Clippers as soon as it started. Even if they do stay healthy, though, they need more than just Kawhi to go off. They also need a lot from Paul George, and more in particular, James Harden. I trust PG a little bit more. He's definitely had a bit of a roller coaster year, but I think he's been a bit steadier, whereas James Harden has kind of had a tale of 2 seasons up to this point. At the beginning of the year, pre-All-Star break, Harden was amazing. 17.3 points per game, 5.2 boards, and 8.3 dimes, while shooting 45, 42, 88 splits. That's fantastic. He was looking a bit more like the Harden we saw at points in Philly last year, where he was playmaking at a high level. The scoring wasn't anything too crazy. He was deferring a bit, but he was doing it efficiently. And also, it was some of the best defense I've seen from Harden in quite some time earlier on in his Clippers tenure. He was looking really good, and that was the moment when the Clippers really started to put it together, and they went on that crazy run. But since the All-Star break, he's not been the same player, shooting just 37.9% from the field and just 29.6% from deep, giving them just 14.7 points per game. The playmaking has still been great, 9.1 dimes, but he's just not as aggressive offensively, and when he is taking shots, they're very often not falling, which is bad for this team. To be the best version of themselves and beat this Mavericks team, they need a lot out of James Harden. They need him to be a high-level playmaker, which I think he can do, but they also need him to be a threat as a scorer, because if he isn't, they can just really load up on Kawhi and Paul George, and the whole thing will probably fall apart. His playmaking ability doesn't bring that much to the table if he's not also this elite scoring threat that can get downhill, put some pressure on the rim, and create some great catch-and-shoot opportunities, because this Clippers team is one of the best catch-and-shoot three-point shooting teams in the entire NBA. One of the main cruxes of their offense is that Harden can go ahead and isolate, get downhill, create disadvantages, force rotations, help to come over, and then find a wide open three-point shooter. That's one of the reasons why they've been so effective. But if Harden's not getting those looks, they kind of fall apart. Things can really start to stagnate where it's just contested mid-range after contested mid-range from Kawhi or Paul George, and they can knock those shots down, but can't be a reliable source of offense against a really good Mavericks team for a 7-game series. Harden may be the most important X factor in this entire matchup. Also because the Mavericks love to go ahead and hunt matchups, and James Harden, while he looked great defensively earlier in the season, has fallen off a cliff on that end. Maybe the intensity will come back in the playoffs, but I'm not really counting on it. And if Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving are just going at James Harden relentlessly over and over, forcing rotations and using their great playmaking to find wide open shooters, things could crumble very fast, and the Mavericks lead can begin to snowball. Harden is going to have to be way better defensively than he's been as of late, and he's got to be way more reliable offensively. On the Mavericks side, it's a similar case where Luka Doncic is also going to need some help. It can't just be him dueling Kawhi Leonard, and the Mavericks are going to come out on top. They need a lot of Kyrie Irving, and to be honest, I'm fully expecting that. Kyrie has some big-time playoff moments under his belt. It always hasn't gone great for him, but I feel like the moments where he really struggled is where he was asked to be that number one guy a lot of nights. However, here, it's pretty much never him. It's just Luka Doncic and Kyrie playing a lot off ball. He's been great in that role. He's done a good job of accelerating as the one option in the moments when Luka isn't on the court. However, don't think that's going to be very often in a playoff setting, and they work incredibly well as a duo. I think they're going to be elite. The question is, how did the other guys play? Because they don't really have this consistent third option out there. In the Clippers, you know it's going to be Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and James Harden in some order. With the Mavericks, it's Luka Doncic and Kyrie, but who is that consistent third guy? There's not one player out there who is doing that on a night-to-night basis. It's nice to have a bunch of different guys that can step up into that role, like PJ or Tim Hardaway, Dante Exum, Daniel Gafford, etc. But I do get a little bit concerned that there isn't somebody solidified in that role that I know I can count on, especially because there is some streakiness with this Mavericks team. Tim Hardaway Jr., who has been one of their leading bench scorers all season, is the definition of streaky. There are some nights where he's unstoppable, and a lot of other nights where he's like 0 of 7 from deep. If he's doing that, he's going to be a liability out there. They need him to be somewhat consistent, or he might have to go on the bench. PJ Washington has been pretty disappointing shooting the ball since getting over to Dallas. The defense has been improved, but they need him to be knocking down his outside shots. Derrick Jones Jr. is like a solid shooter, but not a great one. Dante Exum has been great, but the volume isn't insane. So there are a couple of concerns, like if they're throwing a lot of pressure at Luka and Kyrie, those guys are going to find wide open shooters, but are they going to knock down those shots consistently and do enough outside of those two stars to keep up with the Clippers, who have those three top level players if they're performing, and have like a Norman Powell who plays at a high level consistently, like Russell Westbrook, who was fantastic in last year's playoffs. It's just going to be an interesting duel between these supporting casts. Also on that front, is PJ Washington going to be able to slow down Kawhi Leonard, assuming that's the matchup? Who slows down James Harden? Is it Kyrie Irving? Where do you put Luka Doncic? Because while he's an improved defender, he's still not a great one. To be honest, the more that I look at this, I think this series might just end up being a shootout. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we get some crazy scoring games. And hey, I'm all for Luka Doncic, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Paul George, and Kyrie Irving just putting on an offensive masterclass. But with all those key points covered, I have to go ahead and make a prediction. It's a prediction video. It's a necessity. It's literally in the intro to the video. I said I was going to do this, and yet I still don't want to because it feels so evenly matched the more that I talk about this, think about this, break it down. I don't know which way it's going to go. It feels like a true coin flip. There's a reason so many people are anticipating this, because I think it's going to go 7 games regardless of who wins. I don't see either of these teams making it out in quicker than 6, probably 7 games. I don't blame if you go either way. Really, the main thing that it's coming down to for me, with it being so close, is the injury concern with the Clippers. Because, again, with Kawhi Leonard, we don't know what he's going to look like if he does play, assuming he does play, because we still don't know. Tyronn Lue won't tell us. If Kawhi Leonard isn't 100%, if he's not ready to both guard Luka Doncic and give them insane performances on a night-to-night basis, then I think the Clippers don't stand that much of a chance. And plus, they've just been such a roller coaster team all season, where earlier on in the year they look so dominant, but they haven't looked like that in a while. So do I still believe that team is in there somewhere? Maybe they're just lacking intensity until the playoffs and they'll turn it back up. But I don't want to bank on that, especially when, again, I don't know if their best players are going to be healthy for the series. So with all that being said, I'm going to take the Dallas Mavericks. I'm going to go ahead and ride the momentum that they're going with right now, one of the hottest teams in the NBA. They are going to win this thing in 7 games, taking down the Clippers for the final time that the Clippers will ever play in Crypto.com Arena, moving to the new arena. I think it's the Intuit Dome next season. And it could be the last time that we see this Paul George, Kawhi Leonard duo on the court together in Los Angeles. It could be the end of an era, while it's the beginning of a new one over there in Dallas. I also think Luka Doncic is going to be the best player in this series. That's also something that I took into account when trying trying to pick this coin flip. He's just a special talent. He's been unstoppable all season. I don't think it stops here. I don't think the Clippers have enough reliable defenders to slow him and this Mavericks offense down. So I'm going to take Dallas in this one to win in 7 games. If you pick the Clippers, I don't blame you because the potential they showed throughout the season was ridiculous. I just don't think it'll be enough to go ahead and get it done against a red-hot Dallas squad. So, with all that being said, those are my thoughts on this series. Let me know down below in the comments who you have winning and in how many games, of course. Let me know what other swing factors you think are involved in this series. Maybe some things that I didn't mention. What things did I mention that you think are the most interesting? I appreciate you all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Oh, and also let me know down below what other series breakdowns you want to see, what matchups, because I want to drop at least one every day, probably going into the playoffs, maybe every other day, depending on what kind of matchups I think are worth breaking down. And, how does the play-in races go that give us good matchups in the first place? So we'll have to wait and see. But for the moment, a lot of playoff content coming up. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Rear one, say it back.